Welcome. Now, if you came across this video and wondering what the fuck I'm doing and why I look like Guy Fieri, well, you're in the right place. Today, I'll be going over my UFC 2024 awards, brought to you by yours truly, AaronBMMA. Now, you may be asking, why the hell are you wearing a button-up shirt with no tie and no suit and Oakleys? Well, I'm not that fashion. I don't have too much fashion. This is the best I could throw together. These aren't even my sunglasses, for Christ's sakes. But let's get into it. Of course, today I will be going over my awards for the 2024 year in MMA, specifically more just the UFC, because I'm not going to be talking about fucking PFL or Bellator. So obviously we have the usual suspects in these award shows: the fighter of the year, fight of the year, rookie of the year. We just got a lot of awards on this, so stay tuned. Get your popcorn ready and get ready to cheer on your favorite fighters today. So to state, most of these have 3 contestants per award. Some of them I did not. Some of them just have 1, some of them have 2, but most of them have just 3 contestants for each one. And I will give you 3 contestants and, of course, give you the winner at the end, per usual. And, of course, this is the most prestigious award in all of MMA. You got people clamoring to get this award. MMA Junkies Award fucking sucks. ESPN MMA doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. You think the UFC knows what they're doing? Fuck no. And all of your other content creators, I'm sure they got a little bit of a gist of an idea, but not like me. So, of course, we're going to get into this, and we're going to start with the first one. Best walkout of 2024. Now, there's a lot of candidates for this one, but I more so think there's only more candidates because it's just one person. And my candidate for this year is Alex Pereira. Now, which walkout? Well, any of them, really. UFC 300, 303, and UFC 307. And the winner is UFC 300. Yes, his walkout at UFC 300 is probably the most iconic of this year. This is when he was really coming into his own. He had a fan base behind him, and of course the Jamal Hill trying to catch the bow and arrow stupid shit that he's got going on. No clue what that's about. Jamal Hill will be in this video a little bit later down the line, but Alex Pereira's got the best walkout in the UFC. There's no debating it. It was just, it was really just which one. And I looked through all of them last night, and I decided, UFC 300 is probably the most iconic. It had the most sentimental value to it. This is really when he was just getting going. So I really like that pick. Another award that will be going up today will be the Most Heart Award. So, of course, you guys know what the heart means. It's how far are you willing to go in a fight before you quit. You could get your ass kicked. You could be just losing on the scorecards tremendously. Do you have the firepower and the willpower to come back and try to win this fight? Well, this certain person will be nominated for another award later in this video, but I really think he showed the true testament of what it has, or what it means to have heart in the UFC. Okay? So the most heart this year goes to Maitai Orobai at UFC 308 versus Mateusz Raunbecki. Yes, that is correct. Orobai showed tremendous heart in that fight. His eye was swollen up. He looked like he had just got out of a barn fight and a bar fight. Really, really crazy. I know he just got out of a fight. There's no questioning that. But Orobai showed tremendous heart. Even though he was getting his ass kicked in some of those rounds, he was still fighting back. And that just shows tremendous heart on his end. He's a tremendous fighter, great prospect. And, he's not going to be giving up in future fights anytime soon. So the most heart goes to Orobai. This next award be something I will be doing every year. It's the AaronBMMA Underrated Fighter of the Year. Now, you can't just put all these guys on Fighter of the Year because obviously their fights aren't as more important as the people actually up for Fighter of the Year. So what I made is another category for Fighter of the Year, shouting out some of the guys who aren't really on a lot of people's radars, who are slept on, who are not big names right now, but keep winning, and keep winning in impressive fashion. Jesus Christ, I can't speak it during this award show, but I will give you 3 contestants for this. First contestant actually just fought last week. He is a finisher at all rates. He's the boogeyman at 155, I think, right now. He's explosive, he's powerful, he's dual threat, he can do everything. That, of course, is Joel Alvarez is the first contestant. Really good 2024. Really showed out in both of his fights. I really think he is underrated. And he will be up, of course, for the underrated fighter of the year. Next contestant went 4-0 in 2024. He beat some good prospects, some underrated prospects. Of course, I'm talking about Charles Johnson of the flyweight division. A guy who's ranked and a guy who is not really talked about too much. I don't see people clamoring around for him. Really, really underrated. I think this guy is one of the best in the game. Next contestant, I don't know why I just paused there. I'm not cutting that part, is Ludovic Klein. Ludovic Klein has been underrated his entire career, and of course I didn't do an award show last year, so he is making the run for this year. Another boogeyman at 155. Both Alvarez and Klein are two studs at 155. You guys got to keep your eyes out for. Really, really good stuff from those two. So the winner of this award, I'm a little biased towards it, but you know what? Charles Johnson is the AaronBMMA underrated fighter of the year. 4-0, beat one of my favorite fighters in the UFC, Josh Fan, this year. He's really, really looking good after having a bad 2023. He's improved a lot. He could be up for the running in most improved, but I decided to scratch that because it was going to be Buckley. It was going to be Buckley regardless. So, yes, Charles Johnson wins Aaron B's MMA most underrated fighter of the year. This next fight will be paying homage to a certain individual who got absolutely robbed at gunpoint. Moment of silence, please. The winner of this year's Robbery of the Year goes to Mr. Alexander Volkov. Just a couple of weeks ago, in broad daylight, at UFC 310, Mr. Alexander Volkov had just got done with a gritty 15-minute fight against Suragan, one of the top heavyweights in the world. At face value, he should have won 2 rounds to 1. I think most people would agree with that. I had that as my scorecard. A lot of people had that as their scorecard. But not the judges. They saw it the other way around. 2 rounds to 1 for Gan. Volkov leaves stunned. UFC 310. Biggest job I have ever fucking seen in my entire life. So I'm giving my homage right here, right now to Alexander Volkov. Even though I got that pick right, I'm still giving him his respects and dues because that was asinine. No shot that should have happened. This next award goes to the best losing performance of 2024. Now, when I mean best losing performances, I don't mean what I just meant by Volkov being robbed. No, these two individuals here fought their absolute heart off in losing efforts. They weren't going to win, they weren't supposed to win, but gave them a really tough fight. The first fighter on this list fought twice in 2024. One of the most well-liked people in the entire sport. Had a couple fights with Conor McGregor, a couple went his way, one didn't. Of course, I'm talking about Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev at UFC 302. That fight in and itself was supposed to be an easy fight for Islam Makhachev, one of his easier title defenses. Dustin Poirier, although he had just knocked out Benoit Saint-Denis, he had just came off a Justin Gaethje knockout a year prior, hadn't looked the sharpest, and yet in that fight, he showed more heart and grit and tough boxing, really good takedown defense. Although he lost, and he should have lost at the end of the day if it hit the scorecards, he got submitted in the 5th round against Islam Makhachev, the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. And all you can say after that performance from Dustin Poirier is, what a hell of a job, man. You gave that guy one of the toughest fights of his career. Regardless of who it was, Dustin Poirier had one of the best losing performances in 2024. And the other contestant is a guy who flew under the radar this year as it came to championship material fighters. Actually, one of the more hated fighters on the roster before coming into this fight. And he was fighting the boogeyman of his division, one of the best finishers the UFC has ever seen. Of course, I'm talking about Ian Gary and his losing performance against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think, and I know, that Shavkat Rakhmonov is one of the best welterweights in this world and may possibly beat Bilal Muhammad next time they fight. But there is no denying that Ian Gary is right up there with him. And I know a lot of people before this fight, they were saying it was going to be close, but how close really? Like, Shavkat Rakhmonov is a freaking Terminator. That guy finishes everyone he sees. And Ian Gary For the boogeyman to be Shavkat Rakhmonov, he looked like the boogeyman. Ian Gary made himself look like the boogeyman. He put Shavkat Rakhmonov in such dangerous positions in that 5th round, won the 3rd round, in a fight that was supposed to be a dogfight, but ultimately Shavkat was going to win. Ian Gary made it a lot closer than I even thought it was going to be, and I knew it was going to be a close fight. But regardless, Ian Gary versus Dustin Poirier now for the winner of the best losing performance of the year. And the winner is Dustin Poirier. He wins it after his really great job at UFC 302. I don't really need to explain much more. Like, Dustin Poirier, he showed how good he was. Like the level of what he was before, and he increased that level by 1 more. He looked phenomenal against Islam Makhachev. Although he got outboxed, although he got out-wrestled, there was not much big difference in that. No. He showed that he is up there. He's still one of the top guys in that division. And, you know, if you give him a Max Holloway, how does he look? If you give him a Ilia Topuria, how does he look? If you give him Arman Tsarukyan, how does he look? I don't know after that performance. I could definitely see him winning. I mean, he's still got it at 35 years old. And I'm very excited that Dustin Poirier won this award. One of my favorite fighters in the UFC. And just great losing performance. I don't know why I said it like that, but just a great losing performance. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of these awards. The awards that you really came here for. Now, I will be talking about the least liked fighters of 2024. There will be 3 contestants for these. And these fighters, they made headlines for not saying the right things or doing the right things all year. It could be their performances. It could be the way they spoke about other fighters. It could be the way they just speak in general, the way they move. Look, all 3 of these guys right here have been hated by someone at some point this year. Regardless of who you are, you've probably hated one of them at some point. I know I've hated all 3 of them for a large majority of this year. So let's get into the first contestant. The first contestant is the consensus GOAT. The guy who has been claimed the biggest duck in history. Well, of course I'm talking about Jon Jones, the undisputed, well, maybe not undisputed, but the heavyweight champion of the world, Jon Jones. Of course, the headlines circulated all year. You know, when is he going to fight Tom Aspinall? Well, we don't know. I still don't know. But guess what? Not only was his ducking antics a part of it, his performance, the way he spoke about Stipe Miocic, the way that fight just really went on, kind of just ticked me off from the beginning, and a lot of people too. Of course, the ducking allegations. And earlier this year, he had a little incident with the people that do the drug testing for the UFC, and well, let's just say it didn't go too well. And he got in a little bit of trouble. He got in trouble, you know, big time for assaulting someone or something. I'm sure that situation's evolved now, but people don't like Jon Jones, so of course I had to put him in this video. Jon Jones is the first contestant. I'm not cutting this part out. I don't know why I just did that like a break. But the next fighter is a guy who has been hated by a lot of people this year, and for good reason. He did fight on UFC 300, was one of the biggest shit talkers on the UFC 300 card. Not a lot of people were talking shit before that fight, before their fights at UFC 300. But Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill has been running antics left and right ever since his last fight at UFC 300. Actually, before that even. Right? As a former champion who had to vacate his title due to an injury, of course, people are going to give him a little bit more respect for that. But once you get knocked out by Alex Pereira and say that you are going to make easy work of him and get disposed in the first round by the first left hook he throws, people aren't not going to like that. Plus, the catching of the bow and arrow at the UFC 300 walkout for Pereira, like I had mentioned earlier in the video, didn't run too well. And of course, all of his talk about how he beats Pereira in a rematch, how the ref cheated, the Pereira cheated with the ref, who fucking knows? This guy's been annoying all year. And not only to add that, towards the end of the year, he was getting into a little bit of a scuffle with the person who actually beat him, Alex Pereira. I mean, this guy has just been fucking running his mouth, doing all sorts of shit all year. Look, I'm a decent big fan. I'm not decently big fan, but I don't mind Jamal Hill compared to a lot of other people. I think he gets a lot of overhate. But you can't deny that people fucking hate that guy. I mean, you see anywhere he goes, he just gets hate comments everywhere, and, well, he's up for the running this year. And the next person had such a bad performance, a bad winning performance, that people fucking hate him still to this day for that performance. Of course, he fought a legend at UFC 307. I'm talking about Mario Batista. Mario Batista, probably not a very common name in the UFC circle, maybe with the hardcore fans, but a casual UFC fan probably didn't know who Mario Batista was before he fought Jose Aldo. Well, I'll tell you this much, they know who he is afterwards. He had probably one of the stinkiest, gross, dumbfounded performances I've ever had in my life, and he somehow beat the legend Jose Aldo. And, it wasn't just the fact that he beat Jose Aldo, it was the fact that he did absolutely nothing in that fight whatsoever that showed that he wanted to win that fight. He dove for the legs, the ref broke action, and he dove straight back into the legs. If you ever watched Merab Dvalishvili versus Jose Aldo, it's kind of like that, but even fucking worse. Even worse, because Merab's a grappler. Mario Batista is not known as a grappler. He's more well-rounded than Merab Dvalishvili. And yeah, you could say something about Jose Aldo not doing anything against the fence, but when your opponent's smudging you against the fence and you can't move, there's really nothing anyone can do other than hate the guy. And yeah, of course, Mario Batista has to be a part of this. And the winner for the least loved fighter of 2024 goes to Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill, congratulations. I know you've had a tough year, but at least you win one award. Look, Jamal Hill is not very liked. I get it. There's really no sugarcoating this one. I think a lot of you guys probably know or knew who's going to win this award. And of course, no surprise here, Jamal Hill wins this by a landslide. But on a more positive note, we're going to be talking about the most loved fighters in the UFC in 2024. Now, again, with all these awards, you throw in any fucking name you want here. Fucking Manel Cap's the most loved. No, like general population's not really going to go with that one. We're going general population, casuals, who's the casual fan going to tune into. So I have three contestants again. The first one being Petr Yan. Petr Yan, not really much to say here. Petr Yan's one of the most well-loved fighters in the world. Everyone's a fan of Petr Yan. Everyone's a fan of Petr Yan. There's just really not much more to say. The second contestant here is Tom Aspinall. Of course, Tom Aspinall, a part of the Jon Jones, so it's kind of like a yin-yang, with him and Jones. If Aspinall's starting to get love, Jones gets a lot of hate. If Jones starts to get a little bit more love, Aspinall gets hate. But, of course, this year, a lot of Aspinall love has been circulating through, and for good reason. He is my second favorite fighter in the UFC. I love the guy. His fight style is amazing. Good dude. Only wants to be the best in the world. And a lot of people respect him for that. And the fact that he wants to fight Jon Jones so bad gives a lot of people who hate Jon Jones another reason to like him. You know what I'm saying? And the last contestant is, of course, Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira has done so much this year for the UFC. It's not even funny. He came in and fought 3 short notice pay-per-views. Okay, maybe the 307 wasn't too short notice, but at least all of them were decently short notice enough, saving huge cards. UFC 300 did not have a main event for a long time, and I don't think people really realized that. They had filled out a lot of the card. The main event wasn't there. They were trying to get so many fights here, Jon Jones here, all these stupid fucking fights. And only one person answered the phone, and of course that was Alex Pereira, and he fought Jamal Hill. UFC 303, Conor McGregor's supposed to come back. Oh, Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor. Whoa, what's going on here? Psych. It was actually Alex Pereira. And I don't even have to speak too much about this. The winner of this is Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira is one of the biggest stars in the UFC. And that coming from the fact that he stepped up on so many fights on short notice, gave us so many big highlight KOs. And he's just funny, and looks like a Terminator, and looks like no one wants to fuck with him, but he's actually one of the nicest guys in the world. If you don't like Pereira, you're honestly a hater. I'm being honest. Just straight up, you're a hater. Next award I will be going to do is the Rookie of the Year. And Rookie of the Year just basically means, did you make your UFC debut in 2024? Yes. Yes, you did. That means you're a rookie, right? You could be fighting with other big organizations. You know, like MVP could be a part of this conversation, but of course he's not in it. But surprisingly enough, all three of these rookies come from the same gym. Of course, I'm talking about the Fighting Nerds. I'm talking about Rufi, Prates, and Gene Silva. All three of these guys from the Fighting Nerds. Really pick your poison with any of them, right? You know, Rufi had a good performance here. Gene Silva had a good performance here. Prates here. You know, you go really either or any of them are good options. Okay. But of course, there can only be one Rookie of the Year. And I believe the 2024 Rookie of the Year is Carlos Prates. Now, if you're going to ask me who's my favorite out of all of them, Gene Silva is definitely my favorite. But you cannot deny that Carlos Prates had the best year out of these three. He went 4-0, all knockouts, actually had a ranked win in there, just looked really, really good. Gene Silva, I think, was a close one. He beat Drew Dober, who's a tough guy, but Carlos Prates just looked amazing all year, and he really did show why he is one of the best up-and-coming fighters, and he's ranked now. So, yeah, everyone give a round of applause to Carlos Prates from the Fighting Nerds, and I was going to do Gym of the Year, but as you can see with all these guys, I mean, is there any question? It's Fighting Nerds, bruh. Next award will be going to the best pay-per-view of 2024. A lot of people, you know, sit around, wait each month for these pay-per-views, and they get super excited. I am one of them. You know, I know on pay-per-view week, I'm watching all the embedded episodes, the countdown episodes, the interviews, the press conference, the freaking weigh-in show, all of it, up until the early prelims to the main event. So, of course, I will be giving you my 3 pay-per-views that I thought were the best all year. The first one being UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi, headlined by Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway. It also included Khamzat Chimaev, Robert Whittaker, Magomed Ankalaev, Alexander Rakic. You know, a lot of big fighters, Sher Putin Magomedov, Sher Bullet. He was on that card too. Just a really, really good card. I think it was the best pay-per-view in the last half of the year. Had a lot of big fights. You know, anytime they go to Abu Dhabi, they put on fucking banger cards. You know, and if we're still heading into 2025 hating on Dagestanis, like, you need to fucking grow up. Because obviously they know how to put on good events and they have great fighters. I think I just had to say that real quick. Because I used to be a Dagestani hater. And then I actually became a UFC fan and an MMA fan. So every time they go to Abu Dhabi, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, Middle East in general, they put on banger cards. And of course, this card was one of the best of the year. The next one, UFC 299. I mean, top to bottom, that card was nuts. I remember Fight Week. That was probably one of the most excited I've been for a pay-per-view in a long time. Really long time. It had such good fights on the early prelims, main card. I mean, like, you go back and look at that card on paper, you're like, holy fucking shit. Of course, the headliner was O'Malley versus Chito Vera. We also had Piotr Jan Song Yadong on the card, Jack Della Maddalena, Gilbert Burns, Dustin Poirier, Benoit Saint-Denis, RDA versus Gamrot was on there, Jailton Almeida, Curtis Blades. Really, really good card, and I think it was in the UFC's plans to put on a very stacked card for O'Malley, and they did a very good job because that card was an absolute fucking banger. Yep. But the last contestant is obviously everyone's pay-per-view of the year. I will be giving my cheers right now because it was the most well put together, best fights, best everything happened at this event. And of course, I'm talking about UFC 300. Where do I start with this card? I mean, if you were there, you just had to be there, man. If you were there, God. You know how I was just talking about UFC 299 felt like no other card I've seen before? Well, that was before, you know, I met UFC 300. I mean, Davison Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt is the fucking prelim opener. Early prelim opener. Like, dude, come on. It has to be UFC 300. You go back and look at the entire card. If you are a casual UFC fan and you may have watched it for the first time and you didn't really know what was going on during that card, you just see the big UFC 300, you see 12 former champions are on the card, biggest card in the last fucking decade. Look at those names again, because what they are doing right now in the sport is nothing we've seen before. And UFC 300 is no mistake. That card, I mean, Yuri Prochazka was on the prelims. Like, Yuri Prochazka, like I was saying, Yuri Prochazka is one of the most entertaining fighters of the... Like I was saying, Yuri Prochazka is one of the most entertaining fighters, you know, this sport's ever seen, and he was on the prelims. That just goes to show that UFC 300 was just the best card of the year, and AaronBMMA's clear pay-per-view of the year. Next award will be going to the submission of the year. Now, submissions are one of the best things to watch in MMA. You got guys like Charles Oliveira who latch up submissions left and right. And people that hate on grappling, they don't ever hate on submissions, because submissions are just fun to watch in general, and one of my favorite things about the UFC. So let's look at the three contestants. The first one really probably didn't make a lot of people's list, but made my list, and surprisingly the UFC's list too. I have Paddy Pimblett's armbar against Bobby Green, or King Green that is now. Look, Paddy before that fight, some people were picking him to win, some people weren't. Me personally, I didn't think he was that good. I knew he had a good ground game, but King Green had looked really, really good in his last couple of performances, and of course that's not my best pick of the year. But, great armbar against a guy who's barely ever been submitted. I don't even think he was ever submitted before that. It was a long time ago, but Paddy Pimblett, his armbar is in there. Next submission is Khamzat Chimaev's face crank, rear naked choke, face crank, because I picked submission by rear naked choke, but face crank against Robert Whittaker. Broke Robert Whittaker's jaw. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, right here, snapped his jaw. So, like, his front part pushed all the way back. Crazy submission. One of the most violent submissions I've seen in a long time. The last person to make this list is a guy who was the best fighter in the world, Islam Makhachev. And he only fought one time this year, but had a gritty fight with Dustin Poirier that ultimately ended up finishing the fight by submission. I don't know why, I just couldn't forget what I was talking. But yeah, it's Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. Great submission. Last round after a gritty war, but there can only be one winner, and the winner of submission of the year, I think it's got to be Khamzat Chimaev's face crank against Robert Whittaker. To do that to a high-level competitor and athlete and MMA fighter like Robert Whittaker is truly just a great submission. Overpowered him. It took skill, but he overpowered him and ultimately got it done by face crank. KO of the year. Now, a lot of people talk about KO of the year, and there's a lot of good contestants for this one. First one will be Vinicius Oliveira's jump switch flying knee that he had against Sopaj. A lot of people didn't see it at the time because, of course, it was an Apex Fight Night, but I was actually tuned in for that card. Very underrated Fight Night card all year, but as a guy who was losing the third round and potentially lost the second round, Vinicius Oliveira took a tired, short-notice Sopaj who had been really fighting good that entire time. And Sopaj was trying to get out of danger. He was trying to get towards the fence, and Oliveira came up with a flying knee and sent him packing. Wow, what a KO. If you have time to go rewatch that right now, do it, because that crazy fucking flying knee is perfection on a whole nother level when it comes to knee KOs. You know, almost Jorge Masvidal type, like satisfaction KO. The second KO was at UFC 300, Max Holloway with one of the most legendary moments in UFC history, knocking out Justin Gaethje with 1 second left in a fight that he was already up 3 rounds to 1, potentially 4 rounds to 1. Yeah, and that was just the cream of the crop, of UFC 300. As I talked about the event of the year, that was probably the best moment of UFC 300. Just a crazy, crazy knockout that a lot of people will be talking about for a long time. And the last one I have is, unfortunately, one of my favorite fighters getting knocked out a little bit before. It's Ilia Topuria knocking out Alexander Volkanovski. Look, you could put that one or the Max Holloway one in here. I do think his KO over Volkanovski was maybe not more impressive, but he put him out cold against a better fighter. Look, Max Holloway's got a better chin than Volkanovski, but we've never seen Volkanovski go out like that. We've never seen someone do that to Volkanovski. And it was really the beginning of the end, and it's the start of a new era at featherweight. And Ilia Topuria cemented his legacy with that knockout. But of course, my KO of the year is Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje at UFC 300. There's really no debate about it. Best moment of the year. People are putting it as fight of the year. Maybe not fight of the year, but biggest moment in my time watching the UFC. It's been the biggest moment, the best KO. If you don't have this as the KO of the year, you really biased and forgot what it felt like when you watched UFC 300. Like, I remember we had like 20 to 30 people at our house for a watch party, and it went absolutely fucking bananas when Max Holloway knocked out Justin Gaethje. I wish I can go back in time and relive that moment right now. All right, we only have 2 more awards left, and the second to last one is Fight of the Year. There's been a lot of good fights this year. 2024 has been action-packed from the first fight night of the year to the last. And we've had some good fights this entire year. But there can only be 3, and there can only be 1. So the first contestant is actually UFC 307, Alex Pereira versus Khalil Rountree. A fight where Alex Pereira was up, or actually down, 2 rounds to nothing against a really relatively unknown guy in Khalil Rountree. Sure, people knew about him, but they didn't expect him to go in there and give Pereira one of his toughest title fights. Was up 2 rounds to nothing, and then started fading. But it was action-packed the entire time. No takedowns, no wrestling, no grappling, just straight fists. Straight fists and feet, okay? And, I mean, just an amazing display of heart from Khalil Rountree to the final bell. Pereira looked very good in the last 2 rounds. Just a really good fight. It capped off not a very good card, but it was a very good fight for that card. Next one is actually Daniel Zellhuber versus Esteban Ribovic at the Sphere at UFC 306. One of the best barn burners of the year. Back and forth war that showed the 3rd round was probably the round of the last 3 years. Crazy action. Ribovic gets dropped in the 3rd. Looks like Zellhuber's going to go to a victory here. But then all of a sudden, Ribovic starts tagging Zellhuber, and he hurts him really bad. He hurts him very bad. And pretty soon he starts teeing off on him against the fence. Really good fight. One of the best fights of this year. And of course it was at the Sphere. And yeah, just a banger of a fight. Of course, if you love terrible production value, you always come to this channel because I always bring it. But like I was saying, the last nominee for Fight of the Year has been nominated for a lot of awards on this, all right. This is the 3rd nomination it's had on this entire award show. Of course, it's Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. I don't need to speak too much more on this fight. Let's just get straight into the winner. And if you're wondering why this cut to this different angle of me, my phone died. Of course, it was at fucking 50% when I started recording this. Stupid, I hate iPhones. But the winner of the AaronBMMA Fight of the Year is Daniel Zellhuber versus Esteban Ribovic at the Sphere. Look, I'm not going to go on paper and give a title fight for Fight of the Year. No. I am going off what was the best fight of the year. And plain and simple, that fight was just the fight of the year. It had so many action-packed moments. Really good fight at the Sphere with the spectacle in the background and just made it 10 times better. And of course, we left the best for last. Of course, I'm talking about Fighter of the Year. This is the last award being handed out in today's prestigious award video. And of course, I will be going over the 3 contestants that oh so desperately deserve this spot. The first contestant went 2-0 in the UFC this year with KOs over 2 former champions. I'm talking about Ilia Topuria beating Alexander Volkanovski and beating Max Holloway. He had one of the best 2024s out of any person that is currently rostered. KOing 2 legends like that, cementing your legacy now at featherweight. He deserves to be on this, and I'm putting him on here for a reason. The second fighter is another fighter who didn't go 2-0 this year. No. He went 3-0 this year. All title fights, all knockouts. Of course, I'm talking about Alex Pereira. I've spoke a lot about Alex Pereira in this video. He has had a year. Probably one of the closest races out of all of this is going to be who's going to win Fighter of the Year. Because even the next contestant deserves a shout out for being Fighter of the Year. And that is Dricus du Plessis with 2 title fight wins this year. Beating Sean Strickland. Not robbing Sean Strickland, beating Sean Strickland at UFC 297, and then having another gritty war and beating Israel Adesanya. So, all the marbles come down to this. This is the award to win. And my 2024 Fighter of the Year is... Ilia Topuria is my Fighter of the Year. It's quality over quantity in this case. I think Ilia Topuria by far had the best year out of anyone probably in the last 5. It was that good. Alex Pereira, a very, very, very close second. Very close second. But, of course, I had to give it to Ilia Topuria with his quality of wins in the fashion that he won those fights too, not just winning, knocking them out. Ilia Topuria is my Fighter of the Year, and guys, if you've made it this far, somehow, some way, you are a lunatic, but I appreciate you. And you're probably wondering why this small content creator is even making an award show, barely has 2,000 followers on TikTok, doesn't even have 200 subscribers, has 6 Instagram followers. Well, guess what? I do what the fuck I want to do, and if I want to make an award show and dress like a goddamn idiot, I can. I appreciate you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let's have a great 2025.